I'm Mr. MegaManFan. This is the PC Engine Files, and today we are looking at Andre Panza's kickboxing. Now, who is Andre Panza, and why should you care? These are good questions to ask, and you should be commended for asking them, because they are the very same questions I was asking myself way back in the day when I first bought this game for my TurboGrafx 16. But being as there were not a lot of TurboGrafx 16 games I could choose from, and it was relatively inexpensive at the time, I picked it up anyway without knowing the first thing about the man. And even today on the internet, there's still not much out there about him. BoxingRecords.com lists him as being 3-1 and a French fighter. SureDog lists him as 1-0 and having one mixed martial arts fight, assuming they are the same person. Now that makes you wonder, why would they pick a almost completely unknown kickboxer to be the star of their game? I have a theory about that, not one I can prove, but that they just wanted a name. They didn't care if it was a famous name. They just wanted a name they could put next to the title of this game so they could say, endorsed by a real athlete. And obviously, the more obscure the name, the cheaper the license would be. So they literally just pulled a name out of a hat and said, Andre Panza, how would you like to lend your name to a video game? And he said, sure, why not? And took the payday. And if it's any indication of how little they cared about Andre Panza being the star of this game, he didn't stay the star of the game when it was re-released as a Super CD-ROM game. They just changed the name of it to The Kickboxing, added some Red Book audio to it, and a little bit of an opening introductory video. But aside from that, it's the same game with or without Andre Panza's endorsement, even down to the fact that Andre Panza is still in both versions of the game as an opponent you have to face. One reviewer described it as, well, Andre Panza is the Mike Tyson of this game. No, this is not Mike Tyson's Punch-Out. And I don't just mean because Mike Tyson is more famous or because Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was a better game, or even because the game lost that license and eventually just became Punch-Out. Those would all be good things to consider, but no. What I mean is that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, or just Punch-Out, is fun. Andre Panza's kickboxing, the amount of fun you can have here is very limited. With this side-on combat, you can't really develop any kind of strategy. You can throw roundhouse kicks or low kicks or straight punches or body punches, but you don't get to study your opponent like you do in Punch-Out and find their tells and attack them at strategic times, or save up your power moves and then land one devastating knockout blow. This is just, it could just as easily be a standard boxing game without even being called kickboxing, and standard in the most banal way, which means moving left to right and throwing a strike and either countering your opponent's strike or blocking it. I'm not even sure you're doing any blocking in Andre Panza's kickboxing. I think you're just moving left and right and throwing strikes because, quite frankly, I can win a match doing nothing more than that. I can just move forward, throw kicks, and my opponent falls down. And the more times he falls down, the slower he is to get up until eventually he doesn't get up at all. Which shows me that this isn't like standard boxing, kickboxing, or mixed martial arts, because even in Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, you would have a technical knockout if you got knocked down too many times and the referee just said, okay, that's it, you're done. But this referee seems more than content for you to savagely knock your opponent down over and over again until he can't stand up anymore, whereas in most real combat sports, a referee would step in and stop it long before it got to that point. Or you would hope they would. Some referees have very famously not done that and let fighters take way more unnecessary blows than they needed to take. Andre Panza's kickboxing also suffers from a lack of presentation. And by that I mean there's no crowd noise when you're fighting, there's no music in the background except in the intro. There's really nothing to enhance this game whatsoever. Now, again, the Super CD-ROM adds some of those things to it, but is it worth going out of your way to have either version of this game? I don't think so. It's relatively cheap, even by modern PC Engine and TurboGrafx 16 standards. You can get a loose copy for 20 bucks, but unless you're just desperate for something to play, I don't think I'd bother. And to add insult to injury, and not injuries suffered while fighting, I couldn't even progress past this point where it allows you to select various strikes. I selected to quit, and the game just froze here, either because there was an emulation error or they just didn't program it to do anything else beyond this point because they never thought people would select that option. I don't know which is true, but I was ready to be done with Andre Panza's kickboxing, and I am. Thanks for watching.